Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Suzanne Alexander is a returning guest on our show. Check out her two-part appearance on episodes 541 and 562 of Boundless Body Radio, all about her amazing travels to discover the truth about ancestral diets. Suze Alexander is a multi-award-winning educator with over 30 years of experience in the classroom and a highly accomplished health and nutrition researcher with over 40 years of research to her credit. Suze is the co-author and editor of the newly released book, The Ancestral Diet Revolution, along with renowned physician, author, nutrition researcher, and speaker, Dr. Chris Knobbe, MD, who we have hosted on our show twice, first on episode 73 and more recently on episode 459 to discuss the book. Suze is also the executive director of public relations and philanthropy at the Ancestral Health Foundation and the Cure AMD Foundation, both nonprofit organizations where neither she nor Dr. Knobbe accept any compensation for their work in this field. Suze's ultimate purpose is to share her findings and to save as many people as possible from the suffering that she has witnessed individually, locally, nationally, and very much globally. Suze Alexander. Welcome back. Welcome back to Boundless Body Radio. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Oh, Case, I just love being with you. Oh my gosh, you're just like you're just such an angel in my life. I just adore you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for the kind words. I love your energy. And I remember you guys saying on our last chat that at some point you'd probably wanted to go to Africa. And then it was like a month later, you're like, hey, I'm going to Africa. Like, what? Like, I thought like in 2 or 3 years, maybe. And you were there for so long, posting all these incredible pictures and videos. I finally messaged you, like, do you live there now? Like, do you belong to the bush?
So adorable. Are you moving there?
She's gone. She's gone. We lost Suze.
Case, it was just magnificent. I mean, it was fear factor for me, 24/7, total fear factor, because you're in the bush. And you are not protected by anything. I had my little tent, that I was living in, and you're surrounded by nothing but wild animals, poisonous. You just don't know what's going to be out there, and there's no water, there's no toilet, there's nothing. And so when you have to go, you go, and you're out by yourself. And I have such a phobia. This is the first time in my 62 years I've been able to say the word snake. Forever, I'm literally phobic of them. And where you are, there's just, you don't know. And so, you're going out at nighttime to go to the bathroom and you don't know what you could be up against, no matter what time of day. And so that was very frightening for me the whole time. But other than that, God was with me, and I had the best team that was with me, and it was magnificent.
Wow.
So
I'll never complain.
I didn't think I wanted to come back. I mean, and they said that the Maasai that there was Mateo is my guide. It was his family, and really they want to adopt me and become part of their tribe. And so I'm contemplating going back and building my own little hut where I'll just be living there part-time. It was beautiful. I love it. I just love being there.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was going to say, I'll never complain about staying at like a Holiday Inn Express like ever again.
Chris has always said that's his roughing it.
They didn't give me enough towels. Unbelievable. This is such a disaster. First world problems. Okay, so I want to hear all about it. I want to hear all about your adventures. It looked absolutely amazing. I want to ask you first, though, like most of us in the nutrition world, we kind of already know that there's tribes out there, and there's 2 tribes in particular that are talked about all the time. There's the Hadza and the Maasai. And everybody knows that the Hadza eat plant-based and the Maasai eat animal-based. And we talk about how one is healthier than the other. And that's kind of like all we know. And we know that the story isn't way hugely more complex than that. So tell just on that level, before we get to kind of your travels and everything you went through, what was it like to hang out with both of those tribes? And our ideas of like, this one's plant-based and this one's animal-based, do we know anything about that really?
Not really, no.
Yeah,
but the thing is that it's just so heart-wrenching is what's happening to all the tribes. And I really fear, Case, that they're going to become extinct. The government, the Tanzanian government, is just, and this is part of something I want to start a foundation to help them, because they will die. And the Hadzabe are down to, there's 800, but only about 200 to 400 of those 800 are even still living ancestrally. Those half of them are living now in the villages and things, and they're becoming very sick and obese. And those few that are still remaining are trying so hard, and they're one of the tribes that we lived with. They're trying so hard, but the worst part is that so much of their ancestral land has been stripped from them because of greed, with the tourism and big agriculture coming in. They have nothing left, and so they're sharing their hunting grounds now with the pastoralists like the Datoga and the Rock, other tribes we live with. And so here they're out, and we were with them. I witnessed this case. We're out hunting, and you hear the bells, all the cattle and everything, and the donkeys, they've all got the bells on, they're shepherds and stuff, and they're all these herds are coming out, and all the animals are being scared away. So they have nothing to hunt. And it was just, we're walking, and they work so hard for everything that they have, just so hard. And we're walking and we're walking. You're in the desert, and the sun is just sweltering. It's just so hot. And they're just looking for anything they can find. And they've got bow and arrows. There's no guns or anything, just bows and arrows. And they're trying to shoot at the birds, and they're, and they're missing. And then we have to go look for the arrows, because these arrows, they have to make everything, And so we're looking for the arrows and things, and they finally got a bird. It's a little tiny, red-billed, hornbilled bird, and not enough for the tribe. And so, of course, we cooked it, and, it was just little tiny bits that we all had. It was really nothing. And I felt bad even eating it. I was like, I shouldn't be taking this, But it's just heart-wrenching. But as you go along, and of course, it's just sparse. I mean, yes, there's trees and things, but there's not many. And there's some that are berries, and they're very seasonal eating. I mean, we have to really stop and think, we don't have fruit all the time, think about where we live. And yes, I know the Pacific Islands, it was loaded. There was just fruit everywhere you could go, but I still believe, and I'm still researching a lot of this, that a lot of things have been brought in from other places. In Africa, the Sasanjo was the last tribe I lived with. They grow tons of fruit, and we'll talk about what I saw with their health. But I asked them, I said, have you always been fruit eaters? Have you always been really more plant eaters? No. And I said, well, so you brought these plants in from somewhere? Basically, yeah. Because they don't grow in Africa.
Wow.
They're only been transplanted, and now they're growing. But the ones where I were living, like out, in the desert region where the tribes are really ancestrally living, the berries are very far and few between. So there was some that were just green. They were starting to eat them, but I just didn't want to because they weren't ripe yet. And I didn't know how my body, but they did have some that were called the shamuko, I think it was called. I've got it on the slide. And they look like little cherry tomatoes, but they're their favorite. Even above, and here we've always been told that it was the baobab, but both the Maasai and the Hadzabe, they love this fruit. And it's only available a couple months out of the year. And so they're giving it to me. I'm eating it. Wow, it was so bitter and so sour at the same time. It wouldn't be anything I would really rush to have. I was like, and they were just loving and eating them and eating them and eating them. Now I researched it, and it's loaded with potassium and vitamin C.
Wow.
So when you think about the Maasai, who are very much, animal-based, they are getting plenty of vitamin C with some of the fruits that they're eating. I mean, this thing is loaded, just loaded. And so they are getting these plants. They are consuming them, not all the time, but what they're doing, they're getting enough of it. They really are getting enough of it. And so I thought that was fascinating. But then to go back to the Hadzabe, they were just struggling. And yet, when I look at it, I think it really depends on, and there's only a few tribes that are left, where the region is. The Hadzabe that we were living with, of course, their little land that they've chosen to live in, they're so close to the Iraq and the Datogas, again, the pastoralists. And so that's causing a problem for them. Now, I know that there's another, which I'd like to do when I go back this summer. I would really like to go and see this other.
Of course you're going back this summer.
That's my Africa part 2. Mateo, I'm like, honey, can I come back in August? We got it, man.
You thought you were just going to casually slip that in there.
No, but this one though, Case, is going to be where I'm going to, I'm looking at a bunch of, I mean, it's all between trying to post everything. I'm still so far behind in getting all my posts out, but I'm also researching at the same time because of all these things I realize my aha moments that they're inaccurate that we've been told. And so I'd like to go, there's a couple of research, pieces that are already out there that I'm speaking with the people who already have gone. And I want to kind of take on where they left off, where they had a mobile lab that was right there that I'm going to take when I go with the tribe in August. I'll go right with the warriors, Morans, and they're going for 3 to 4 weeks, usually in July or August. And Mateo said August would be best for him. And I said, okay. So we'll take the lab with us. And I would like every day throughout the day except I'm going to take it a little further because I want to do fecal testing as well. And, but now I think is I've got to raise that money because I don't, this would be, and I'm not wealthy. I'm a retired teacher, so I'm depleting my money, but I know that God's got a plan and we'll find a way.
Easy.
So that's my goal is
That's
to go
amazing.
back. It's gonna be fun. So, but with the Hadzabi, there's a couple other tribes that are not surrounded by the pastoralists, and I'd like to go and see if they're having more success. It looks like it is when I'm talking because I've got so many connections now that I'm now texting and talking with so many different tribes. I can ask them questions anytime I want, and it's remarkable. And so I'm hoping that through my connections now that I'd like to really go and hunt with this group to see if they're having more success because it sure looks like it. It looks like they are definitely getting more because the tribe we had, there were really such slim pickings, and I said to Mateo, I said, we have to go get them. So we went, we found a tribe that was willing to sell me a lamb. So I gave them a lamb dinner and they were just so ecstatic, and the women, of course, they do eat plants. They do, the tubers, especially the tubers. And a lot of them, they'll just chew on them. And boy, they're loaded with the hydration, a lot of water and the minerals. Case, I was like, wow, it was lovely. It was very, very lovely, but they roast them. They will eat them raw, but it's interesting because they learned that by roasting, it allows them to be able to not to work so hard, but they're also getting more of the nutrients. It's releasing the nutrients. It's opening up the cell walls for them and so forth. And it was just profound because it's only like 5 minutes. They're roasting them very quickly. And that's their chosen one. But when we were out hunting, they were they see them so quickly. They see like a root and they pull it. And they were actually eating. And they said they were more like a sweet potato type thing. And so they will eat some of the plants. They will swallow others. They will just chew and just spit the fibers out.
Got it.
But, in terms of everyone saying they're more plant-based, they said to me, baboon, the derriere and the brain of a baboon is their ultimate favorite.
Wow.
We didn't see any baboons when we were hunting. When we were driving around, we saw a lot of baboons everywhere. And every time I see them, I see that derriere thing. I'm like, wow, I don't know, but I will try it.
Wow.
If I can, I'll be, so that they said meat is everything. And so it's not the fruit that they're, and the baobab was not even in season. It was not in season. And they said they did use them all up. They said if they wanted to walk miles and miles and miles away, there may be some old ones still hanging on a tree, but they said it's just so far that they can just eat the berries that are in season at that time.
Wow.
So,
well, I can definitely relate to that. If I want to go get berries, I have to drive 1.5 miles. There's like 3 stoplights. Terrible. I have to walk to this cold refrigerated area to get, strawberries that are big as the palm of my hand. Sounds very, very similar.
They're so not looking. That's not how they look in the wild.
A little slightly different. Okay. Before we get into your journey, I do want to ask you, now you've done 2 of these. How are you more convinced that your original hypothesis is true, that the further away we're getting from ancestral living and ancestral diets, the worse our health is getting? Or are you finding more exceptions and that's not necessarily the case? And I would say in particular, seed oils.
Oh, Case, it's wherever I go, I just keep, there's no doubt. There is no doubt because even the Maasai, who are so adamant about and Mateo, I mean, he and Tembo, my driver, and then Menendo, he was not Maasai, he was a different tribe. But Tembo and Mateo, they are like my boys. They're like my sons. We are together 24/7, and we could talk about anything. And believe me, I will tell you some of the things we talked about. You'll be like, okay, this is too much information. But that was so swell. The great thing about it was for me is that because they were like my boys, we could just, we could just, I would be open up their mouth and looking at their mouth, and I had my fingers in their mouth, and they, they're pulling skin off of my face as I'm peeling, like they're, they're just, you know, it was so funny, but we became so close. And that was the most powerful thing for me because I could learn so much more from them because we became so close that we could just talk about anything. And we're talking about details that you can't imagine. But anyway, and I said to them, we would travel between tribes, and sometimes it's hours and hours and hours of driving. And we would stop in villages so that I could go and do my investigating and looking at what's going on in the stores and things. I posted some of those. And to see the people, and they knew some of these people, and this is the beautiful thing, they're people they grew up with in their villages. And to see them now, they are enormous. And Mateo told me with one of the girls, he pointed out, he goes, this has only been a year. He said, she's only been gone a year. Look at the size of her.
Wow.
And he goes, why? And I said, honey, they say there's a thrifty gene. And I said, I don't believe it because I said, this is my philosophy. I said, my feeling is that we, the Americans, our great grandparents grew up in about 1920, 1930s when Crisco oil and all these oils were coming in. It was gradual. It was so slow. They were still cooking with the wonderful traditional fats, the tallow, the lard, the butters. And so it was just so gradual as that came in. And their bodies were slowly adapting. And then as each of our generations have been born, we've been adapted. And now we're at the point of it's just so much of our diet if you're eating processed food. But when the tribes go, and all of a sudden they're no longer getting their raw milk anymore. They're no longer getting their slaughtered meat anymore because it's too expensive. They have to go to the store and they have to buy what's in there. And that's all there is the same, but it's even worse there because in the Pacific Islands, it was palm oil. Palm oil is about 10 to 12% linoleic acid. Of all the places I've been, this was the worst. I thought Fiji was bad with soybean.
Yeah.
About 50. This was sunflower oil, one of the worst, which is 68% LA. Safflower is the worst. Sunflower is just a little below that. Everything was sunflower oil. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And I'm seeing these. And so I said to him, I said, honey, your friends are coming here and they have just been thrown into it. And I said, this is all they're eating and they're blowing up. I said it would happen to anyone, I really believe it would happen to anyone because it's just so fast. Now, Mateo, he told me because he's a businessman as well. He also owns his own safari company. And that's where I found him. And he has an apartment in Arusha, which is like 10-hour drive to get back to where his family lives in the tribe. And he said that when he moved there, there was no raw milk. All of a sudden he has nothing to eat. He tries to find meat, but it's so expensive to buy. And he said, so he started incorporating foods he wasn't used to, tomatoes. And he said, all of a sudden he's getting sick. He's ending up in the hospital because the gut ache the pain is so bad. And he goes, I'm becoming sick, but I never was before. And he says, and now that he's been with me, he's got this aha moments of all the things that were causing it. And he said, we don't know this. And he said, I learned so much from being with you. And he goes, I can prevent feeling awful again. I won't have to go through this ever again. And he said the time he spent in the hospital, in the emergency room and so forth, trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And now he finally understands. So it was powerful. It was powerful to be able to see it. It's actually him to point out to people a year ago, they were perfectly fine. Look at them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy. So this matches pretty much exactly the hypothesis. Yeah,
absolutely.
and to hear you describe what the South Pacific was like and how horrific that was, and have this be like way way worse. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Take us through the journey. This is such gripping stuff. I'm like open mouth,
Oh,
like so
it was
enthralling.
just it was just so amazing. So yeah, so the Hadzabe, gosh, I love them so. I love them all. I loved every tribe. They was so welcoming. Of course, they weren't used to having someone like me around. And even though the Hadzabe, a lot of them have the tourists coming in, and there are tribes that are basically designed for tourists to come to. And I specifically said to Mateo, I do not. I want the original. I want someone who is so original, where they aren't used to seeing white people coming in. And so that's where we were. We were way out in the bush. And so, like, when we got there, they had to totally clear the land to make a spot for our tents. But even though we're right there, and there's a lot for right there. And if you wanted to, guys, you can go on in my social media. You can see everything. I mean, as Case was saying, there's everything you can imagine. We've got there. I'm still posting. I've got hundreds of things still to post. There's so
So
much.
cool.
And so, and they were just so amazing. And the chief spent so much time with us, and his wife. They're monogamous. They only have a man only has one wife, and and I think that's another reason why their population is so small. The other tribes are polygamous, and
Wow.
so the father, like Mateo, his dad has 4 wives. Just his mother alone has 11. His father has a total, I think about 32 children.
Wow.
That's one man.
Wow.
And so that's why you can see why that of course, all the children help with their livestock, help them to keep everything going. But with the Hadzabe being monogamous, they're dying out, and they're one of the last on the earth of hunters and gatherers.
Wow.
And so my time with them was so profound, because I kept looking at them, and sometimes I just wanted to cry, because I'm thinking, you know, years down the road, they may be gone. And so I would really love to be able to be able to fight the government to bring their rights back, to be able to get the land that is their ancestral land. It's kind of like here in the United States. I'm part Native American, and when you think about our land was kind of stripped from us, and we're all on reservations. It's the same thing that's happening with the wait till I tell you what's happening with Maasai. It's heart wrenching. It's heart wrenching. So I would just love to be a voice for them. I want to be the voice for the tribes, and to help them. And I've become very, very close with the head chief of all the Maasai. He
Yeah.
texts me all the time, always messaging,
Oh.
and we'll talk what's going on with him. But anyways, okay, so yeah, so with the Hadzabe, I was saddened to see that they smoke cigarettes, but the cigarettes that they're smoking they grow their own. They grow their own tobacco, but they'll find a little piece of paper they can find, and they roll it in that. Just whatever they can find when they walk to go to, and they drink alcohol. Back in the day, a lot of the tribes talked about that they make honey beer, and so that's what was done in the day. But now they're not doing that. They're buying the hard stuff. And I think
Mm.
it's because, the tourists and people that come in, they see them, oh, we'll bring them this as a gift. People, please don't bring them these things as gifts. Bring them meat, bring them meat. That's what they need. And so to see them doing those things, it was just sad. And we asked them, because I get concerned whenever I see someone who's drinking heavily or whatever, needing these, marijuana. They had a lot of these things. Is it to numb their sadness, because it's just no longer what it was? They had to work so hard for anything. But we talked, and I was saying that to them, and Mateo was always translating. And I said, "You're sad?" And they go, "We have nothing to be sad about." They said, "Our lives are really great. We get up in the morning, we look for food, and they said, we don't have a lot of stress." And so Tay and we talked a lot about that, and he said, maybe it's just become what they are. I don't know. I don't know, but to me, I just thought, is it because they're sad? Are they depressed? I don't know. But that made me sad, just very sad. But then from there, we went to the Datoga. So I did 2 Datoga tribes. The first Datoga tribe, they were the blacksmiths. And then the second tribe of the Datogas were the pastoralists, very much like the Maasai. And so so we get there to the blacksmith, and it's two young boys. Of course, I thought they were boys, and they're in their 30s, like the age of my children. And oh, look at them. And their grandfather is 102, and he was there. And that video will be coming out probably next week. I think I'll be posting that one. And he was the original of he's what taught them to be the blacksmiths.
Wow.
And they were just beautiful how they were making things. And I bought a lot of their things that they were making and so forth. And so, but they were very thin, very fit, not obese at all, very, very thin. And so, of course, I'm always asking people to open their mouths so I can look at it. You can see that video be coming up too. And they weren't as pristine as the meat eaters. Now, you would think them being a Datoga that they would be, but because they're so busy all day long creating beautiful metal things out of scraps that they find, they will go into the villages. They'll walk 10, 20 miles to find, padlocks and nails and all these things. They melt them down and make them into beautiful jewelry. But the great thing is that they are supplying the arrowheads and the knives for all the tribes.
Wow. Wow.
Well, a lot of them will barter, like the Hadzabi will bring honey, and they'll give them honey in exchange for the arrowheads.
That's so cool.
Others, like the Maasai and the Iraq and so forth, they will raise chickens and they'll sell the eggs, and then they'll take that money and go and buy the metal for their either their spears or their knives or their machetes and things. And so they're all working together. It's so beautiful. It's really quite beautiful. And so I asked them, I said, so what is your diet like? And they said, well, the cattle aren't here. We can't take care of them. We're working. And so they said, we basically live on ugali, which is cornmeal, maize, and water, or makande, which is kidney beans and corn boiled. Okay, and that's their diet. They're basically vegans. And they said sometimes they did have a couple of goats. They said sometimes they'll drink some milk, but most of the time this is what. And so I was like, oh, they're mostly vegans, and so this makes sense why their teeth. But yet they still look fairly decent. Fairly decent. Now, you'll see that in the video that I'll be posting next week with the 102-year-old man, very spry, not as fat as the animal base, not as fat. His teeth had all his teeth, but they were not looking good. They were not. You look at the teeth of the Maasai, and so they were just, even in their hundreds. I was like, look at these teeth, and so there is a difference. And even Mateo, he was like, I never thought of this. He goes, I just can't believe I'm learning, And so it was amazing to see that kind of thing. And yet he was right down on the ground, this 102-year-old man crawling, looking for things. And you could see that on a video. And he did a little dance for me and stuff. So it was really, again, sharp as could be. I talked about his eyes and his ears. He says, they aren't what they used to be. But he could hear me perfectly fine. He wasn't doing that kind of thing. No walker, nothing. And he says he'll walk many miles. So again, amazing, still amazing. So they're living, there's not a lot of processed food.
Yep.
Except, to me, corn and beans, and I just don't know. But wait till you get the next. So now we go to the Datogas, who are the pastoralists. Now wait till you hear what they say about beans. So we're there, and it was interesting because they were really not used to seeing me. I think that the Datoga, the guys that are doing the blacksmithing, they're used to seeing people because a lot of the tourists want to come and buy things from them. So there was nothing different about me. But when we went to this other Datoga tribe, when I walked in, it was like, what is this? They're like, look at her skin, look at her eyes, they're green, look at her hair. I mean, there's pictures, you can see them they're like, they couldn't believe, oh my goodness, it's so soft. Because their hair is very coarse. And of course they shave most of their heads, so they don't even have their hair. But when the boys, when their hair is growing in, it's very coarse. And so they could not believe, and were you born with this hair, with that, so they were just, but not, fascinated by that. But Gin, who was the man, he was probably in his 30s, very tall, kind of looked very similar to a Maasai. And he was kind of like the spokesman for them. And so I asked if I could, I always would ask, may I take pictures? And he would, no, you cannot. No. And I was, okay, I will abide by that. I was fiddlesticks in my mind. I would really like to document, but God's will. So I asked if I could see their spring, because I always wanted to see where they get their water from, because that's so important, where they get their water from. And back to the Hadzabi, their water supply was basically anything they could find. It's something, it was usually very murky, very muddy looking.
Wow.
Pond, who knows what's growing in it. And they would just bend down and drink from it or slash. And you'll see the videos I put on of them doing this. And another thing you hear in research saying, oh, it's all the plants that they're eating. That's why they've got this microbiome that's the most diverse of anyone in the world. Their diet, no. I'll tell you why they're so diversified. It's because what they're drinking is probably so. I mean, I'm a person who goes and gets spring water, every couple of weeks, and I don't know what's in my water. And I'm sure that there's E. coli, there's animals and things. And because I've been drinking this for 20 years, my body can handle it. When Chris drank from my water, he got sick because he's not used to this. My gut microbiome is, my immune system's ready for these things. And so when I look at these tribes and I see what they're eating, they carry these knives with them, case they have never been washed. Okay. They don't have soap around with them. They're not washing and scrubbing things. It's the same thing that they cut the meat with yesterday, the same thing they cut that bird with. It's the same thing that who knows what their dog is licking off of. Their germs are everywhere. And that's what they're ingesting. That's what they're putting in. You're on fecal matter. You're on all this stuff all over the place. You're splitting up. When you slaughter an animal, and I'm watching all this, and I'm eating all this, and they're slaughtering, and you got the colons here, and you got the stomach, and they're sledding it all up. How can you not have the most diversified
That's amazing.
I don't know. I think we're stretching when we're saying it's the plants that they're eating. I really, really, really do.
Fascinating. Wow.
And even the Maasai, and again, there was no translation barrier between Mateo and myself. I mean, he and I would stay up and just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And we talked about everything. And he's amazing with his English ability. And now even the month he spent with me, he's like, not really. Of course, a lot of my way I talk, I say mountain instead of, I guess everyone says mountain. I drop the T's in most of things. So he had to really learn a new language of English, called the Sioux language, But anyway, so that's a really key important thing about the gut microbiome. I think with all the tribes and even the Maasai, they wear this machete. And I almost feel like I need a machete because boy, that thing came in handy constantly. We're walking through and that machete's out and they're cutting through things, and I'll tell you what, we had an attack by a wild hyena, but I'll tell you, there's so much to do. one adventure after another.
Oh my
but anyway, I felt like the female version of what's that movie? Indiana Jones. I felt like the female version of that, It was wonderful, so exciting. But anyway, so in back to the Togas. So we're running, they're taking me down to see their spring. And of course, quirky me that I am, I'm jumping over plants and bushes and things. And here they're jumpers, very much like the Maasai, they love to jump. So I'm jumping, and they're like, what are you doing? Especially a female. Of course, a female wearing pants is just, what is she, Because they don't do that. They're very feminine. The women are very, very feminine. And so I said, try it, And so they're starting to jump. So I take a picture of Gin jumping. And I said, I just got to show you something. And so he looks at it, and he's like, why? That's because he'd never seen himself before.
Wow.
They've never seen pictures of themselves, and that's the same thing with the Hadzabi. They're like, they kept wanting to see pictures of themselves, It's like, this is awesome. I'm like, this is you, And so, and so then they all started a competition, which I'm going to put that video on. Wait till you see them. Massive. I mean, these are not bushes anymore. They're these big trees. They're jumping over them, And I'm like, I'm not even going to try that one. And so, so I took video of it, and now he's at the point of, oh my gosh, do more. So that's how I think again how God worked, where he was willing to let me to record things, and then he was going to do the live chats with us and so forth. And so the live chats we did with them were so profound. And at one point they brought in the medicine woman, and she's about 102. 100, 203. They don't know their ages. They just guesstimate based on history, what things they know happened around the time they were born. With the Maasai, they have a cool thing. They have a name for every 10 to 15 year period. There's a name for that group. So that's how they can
Wow.
tell where you kind of fall in line with that. So that's pretty brilliant what they came up with.
Wow.
But anyway, so we're interviewing them, and they're all there at this point. And I said, what do you think about beans? Because I knew that the other Datoga was eating them. And they're like, oh no, you cannot eat beans. They will either kill you or they will make you blind. And when I looked, when they said that, because I kept saying to Mateo, look at their eyes, like 3 or 4 of them, they looked like they were having either glaucoma, and the witch doctor or the medicine woman, her eyes were just horrible. I mean, just you could just see she couldn't see probably. And I said, I wonder either, and I saw the same thing in the Solomon Islands with the Samoans, not the Solomon Islands, in Samoa, that they had like a glaze on men, and even on young people, a very similar thing. But their eyes were almost like turning like a blue. I kept wishing Chris had been there to say, what is this?
Yeah, right.
What is their eyes? The one time I really need him
An
here.
ophthalmologist would have been great right about then.
Yeah, I really need him here. And so, interesting. So I thought to myself, is this because they have seen something was happening to their eyes? Because normally they were eating exactly the same diet that the Maasai, which was the meat, blood, and the milk. But then they started adding in this makande, which is the beans and the corn, and the ugali, which is the grain of the corn. And I wonder if that's why they took the makande out, because they started noticing all of a sudden this is happening. So I keep wondering, is there a genetic default there? I don't know. Again, these are things I've got so much research to do, so much that no one's talked about because it hasn't been seen, it hasn't been noted. And so then the medicine woman started getting tired, so she wanted to leave. So she leaves. And this is on one of my live chats. You can actually see all this happening. Her son, who's about 88 or so, sitting next to her. Very spry, gorgeous, handsome man, and beautiful teeth. I mean, just doesn't have the eye issues going. And I said to him, what have you noted since ugali has been introduced? And I said, how long ago was it? And out of the tree, Gin, he's sitting up in the tree. He said, 24 years ago. That's when it came in. They knew exactly when ugali came in.
Wow.
And I said, what have you noticed since you've incorporated that? And he became very upset and very disturbed. And all these teenagers are there, listening and talking and everything. They want to hear everything. And he's like, in their language, and of course, Teo is telling what they're saying. You've got to stop. It's the ugali. Our health is failing since we brought this in. We didn't have sickness. And he's adamant. And he kept telling them, do you hear me? And he says, I keep telling them, but they aren't hearing me. We need to go back to milk, blood, and meat. It was so powerful to hear this 88-year-old man to say that same thing, to have him saying that. And of course, I heard it across the board in all of the other tribes, every single elder, every single one of them said the same thing. We've got to go back. We've got to get rid of the ugali. It's destroying us. And that's just ugali, which is just cornmeal.
Wow.
Oh, and it was powerful, so powerful. So I kept saying to Teo, to tell the boys, the young teens, tell them, listen to him. As it's the same thing we see in our country. We have illness and we're trying to figure out what's causing it. And this is just one thing, just one product is changing them, which I thought was really powerful, really, really powerful. And so then, of course, they told me what is their main diet. And I said to this man, I said, when you were at your prime, when you tried with at your prime, what was the diet? And he said, milk, meat, and blood, and butter. We love butter. And he said, and we still do butter. And they do about 1 liter a day, each person, 1 liter a day.
Is it liquid?
There's this kind of liquid. And matter of fact, I'll show you. This is called a calabash, and this is what they gave me, and I love it.
What?
And
It
you
looks like a
open,
bat or something. What is it?
but it's a gourd in
Oh,
the
okay.
Sanjo, the Batemi tribe, my last tribe that I live with, they grow these. It's like a squash, almost like a squash, and they grow these. And they sell them to the pastoralists, and so they hollow it out. Okay, and it's one of my pride and joys. And of course, the smell of it, I smell every morning when I get up. It reminds me of being in the
Wow.
boma, in the huts with my Maasai. I just love it. I tell Teo this all the time. I'll say, honey, I feel like you're here with me. And so what they do is when they milk the cow, this is their container that they milk into. Okay. And so they milk it right into it. And you can see there's a video of me actually doing this with one of the Maasai tribes. I actually figured it out towards the very end. And so you can milk and the milk goes into it. This is a liter. This is a little over a liter, this one. And so, but what they'll do, so this one they can store their milk in, but they have other ones that they'll make their butter, and you'll see them, they're swinging it back and forth. And that's in some of the videos as well. You see them swing it back and forth, and then it makes their butter, but it's more of a liquidy butter, more of a liquid, because again, they don't have refrigerators, nothing to store anything in. And so they drink it. It's more of a liquid butter that they're drinking, and they'll drink a liter of that a day per person of the butter,
Wow.
you know? And so it's really fascinating. And so he was saying that's when they were at their ultimate. He says, we need to go back to that. We need to go back. And so so we left the toga, and then we went, I got, because how many tribes have I done? That's 3. Okay, so then we went to our first Maasai, and that was where that was going to be Mateo's family. And so we spent most of the time with them. A lot of time there. And of course, all the tribes have dogs, and the dogs are very important to how they live. The dogs help them to herd. The dogs keep the animals, and the hyenas are everywhere. I mean, you can just hear them at nighttime. And of course, the hyenas are trying to kill the animals constantly. It's just, if you look at pictures and so forth, you can see, a boma with the Maasai tribe is, they live like in a clan, and the clan is their family, their extended families and so forth. So they've got their huts around, and then and the animals are housed right within their huts. So you've got the cows, but they've got these big fences that they've made with these, pricker bush type things, or big trees and so forth that they've made. So the cows are in one, and then the goats and the sheep are in another, and they're protected as much as they can. But the hyenas, like Mateo, he and I, we talk all the time, or texting, either one, and they've had a whole bunch of sheep and goats killed this week.
Wow.
So I'm working on, again, that's part of my foundation help, is I want to be able to put, because one of the tribes in the Sanjo, they had a little solar panel on top of their hut, and that allowed them to have a little light bulb. And so we were talking, I said, honey, what if I buy you a solar panel so we can put a light out so that it will keep the hyenas away? And he goes, oh my gosh, he calls me mom. He goes, Mom, that would be so great, but it would be expensive because they don't have that kind of money. So I said, okay, I'm going to research it, darling. And I said, I'll see if I can send you one. I said, because so far I think they've lost 6. And it's heart-wrenching to see them losing their animals because
Wow.
of the wild animals. So this is another project I'm working on. So anyway, back to the Maasai. So it was just profound. I've been studying the Maasai my whole life, and I've always wanted to be a Maasai. I always say I'm like the white Maasai. And to be there and to just become part of their family. I mean, they dressed me, and his mom and his sisters and his stepmothers, because his father has 3 other wives, and they were making the most beautiful jewelry. And I've got them here. I still wear a lot of them. I mean, they're just the most beautiful thing. They made this for my phone, to wear my phone. And they're all beaded. They make everything by hand.
That's
Case. It's
beautiful.
just,
That's a cool phone case.
well, the sad thing is that my phone's bigger. So they were gonna make me another one, but I said, oh no. So I just use this to put like my Kleenex and things in, and just
That's
I
perfect.
I love this. But they've got so many beautiful things that they gave to me, and I wanted to show you this too. Look at this. This is what they used to back in the day. This is what they drank their milk out of.
So is
It's
it
the
like a
horn.
horn? Okay.
It's a horn from one of the cattle. So
Wow.
this was their cup. I've always wondered, what would they have drank from? This is what they would have had.
Wow.
Very,
Yeah.
isn't that cool?
It
Hang
fits
on, yeah,
perfect.
yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, so living with them was just remarkable because I mean, and the Maasai will do everything they possibly can to not comply with what the government wants. The government is trying to destroy them. They're taking away. Last year, Mateo said that they took all of their pastures during the dry season. We don't think about this. No one talks about that there's a dry season and a wet season. And this is important for everyone to understand. During the dry season, back in the day, when they had land, they could go within their ancestral land. They had acres and acres, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. They could go. But now those acres have been taken away. And so during the dry season, they have no green pastures to take their cattle, their livestock to. And so they're dying. And that's coming up July and August. When that comes up, he said last year they took that land away. And they lost so much of their herd because there was no place where they could get water and there was no place where they could get graze them.
Wow.
And so so at that time of year is when they would normally do the blood, where they would do the nicking in the carotid, and that's when and the reason why, and no one ever talks about this again, they do this because it helps to make their milk go further. In the dry seasons, the cattle can't produce as much milk. And remember, each of the Maasai, the women drink about 4 to 5 liters a day.
Wow.
The men drink 6 to 8 liters of milk per day. But in the dry season, they can't because the cattle aren't producing that much milk. And so they would use the blood to mix it with to make it go further.
Wow.
So that's the point of it. That's the whole point. It helps the nutrients to go further. But now he said the government wants them to add ugali. And so they don't want to because they know that when you start adding an ugali, their health fails. And so they're doing everything they possibly can. And when I see this, and I don't want them to become sick, I don't want them to die out. And I talk with the Maasai chief. This is not just the chief of one tribe. This is the chief of all the Maasai throughout Tanzania and Kenya. He would be considered like a president. And he's 36 years old and he will be this position for the rest of his life. This is just not like a term, until he dies, this is his position. And he's kind of like voted in. They searched to find the right person and he was the one. He's highly educated, which they're not used to having. And he speaks English very well. And you can see I did a live chat with him and we're gonna be doing more live chats. But so the key is that we have to be able to, guys, across the world to see this travesty that's taking place, that they do not want to eat like we eat. They want to continue to eat their food because they know how healthy it is for them. So anyway, so I'll tell you what a slaughter camp is like. Do you want to ask me questions, Case? I know I'm rambling.
This is fascinating. No, I'm just sitting here taking it all in. I'm enjoying every second of this.
Thank you. But when you go to a slaughter camp, and then now the slaughtering camp, there's two different kinds. There's a slaughtering camp they do a couple times a week, or there's a slaughtering camp that I talked about I want to go to this summer where I would bring the mobile lab in, and that's where the warriors go. And so the regular slaughtering camp that's at the Boma, at their homes, where their village is, it's just they go out and they will not, the cows are so revered. They are just prized to them and they don't want to kill them, but they only will slaughter a cow during like a wedding, a celebration. It has to be something big that's going to be happening. Otherwise, that's why they have the goats and the sheep. That's what they would be slaughtering. And also the goats and the sheep during the dry season, they don't need these big, huge pastures. And the goats, of course, they can just eat bark and they can eat all different kinds of things. And the sheep don't eat as much. And so they're easier to maintain. And when the dry season comes, they won't be dying off as their cattle do. And so, again, so we were doing a lot of the slaughtering of the goats and the sheep when I was there. And it's interesting to see because the men, women, they're very, again, all the tribes, same with the Hadzabe, the women live in their region and the men live in theirs. They eat separately, it's very separate lives, very, very separate lives. And so in the slaughtering camp, I felt so honored that they would have me there, but they said, well, you're kind of like, we look at you as you're not like the true tribe member. So it's not breaking a law. I said, okay, but I still want to be a member. But I was all dressed in their shukas. I just felt such like a Messiah. It was so beautiful. And so when they slaughter the animal, they usually suffocate it. They'll suffocate it because they don't want it to experience pain. And it's very fast. It's very, very fast. It's done in a loving way. They love their animals. They love these animals and they care about them so much, and they are so one with nature. When you see why they don't want to take a life. That's why they will never eat a wild animal. They will never kill a wild animal. Yes, there are times they have to kill them to protect their cattle and to protect their homes, their children, but they're not killing them for food. And yes, we hear about them killing a lion, and again, it's part of their culture, but of course the government has stopped them from trying to do these things anymore. But sometimes they have to protect themselves. So it's to protect them, not to go and kill them. But it's interesting, and there's a couple of videos you see me showing them that the wild animals feel so safe with the Maasai because they're just everywhere that you'll see the cattle out there, and then you'll see zebra right there. You'll see the giraffes right there, and the shepherds are right there as well. And you can just see how they all just are one with nature. They're living together. There's this harmony that's just so beautiful. That
No
is never
fear.
again.
They're not afraid.
No, and it's just so beautiful because they know these shepherds are not here to hurt us, and it's just it's so profound, and I think that's another piece to their health. They're so into nature, and they're so one with nature. They're so one with God, and about 95% are now Christians, by the way. They've become Christians.
Wow.
A little throw that one in. Again, and one of the elders, he was close to 100. He and I sat and talked for a long time, and he was reminiscing when he was a young boy how the missionaries came, and he said that I said, I've heard so many people talk about how mean the missionaries are. He said, oh no. He said, they took me under their wing. They gave me food. They cared for me so much. He said, I could not believe what they did for me.
Wow.
And I said, you have no animosity? No, not at all. He's not at all. And this is again through translation with Tembo and Mateo telling me what he was saying. But he just said, no, he goes, I think the world. And he talked about one specific priest that they became very good friends. And it was beautiful. But anyway, so back to the slaughtering camp. So they when they slaughter, it's amazing because every part of the animal is divided between different members of the tribe. So everybody gets their share. And so even if they're at a slaughter camp miles and miles away with the warriors, they will bring that meat back to the women, their portions that they have. So I'm making a slide up of this. I can never remember what it is, but Mateo's told me all these things. That the liver from, I know it's wrong, I think the sheep and the cow, I think goes to the woman. And the liver from the goat goes to the men. So that they always know that someone's going to get their liver because that's
Wow.
very important. But again, for those of us who are saying we need to be eating honey and we need to be having organs every single day, wrong. They do not eat those every day,
Okay.
at least not. Now, back in the day, again, before, and we're talking many, 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 many decades ago, before all the land was taken away, they were slaughtering every day, but they don't anymore because they don't have the herds anymore. They don't have the land anymore. They just can't. They would have no animals left anymore. And so that's why everything's very much kind of reeled it in. They don't. So milk has become the key food for them for quite a long time now. But anyway, so I felt, and I know that, Mateo talks about that they could eat up to 4 kilograms of meat a day.
That's a lot.
And the women could eat up to 2 kilograms. Now, 1 kilogram is like 2 pounds, around 2.2
Yeah,
pounds, I
right.
believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I was eating that when I was in Jerusalem and so forth. I had to order everything 2 kilograms. So I would be ordering by 2.2. But anyway, when I was there at the slaughter camp and they're dividing all the pieces up, it was not a lot. I was starving. I was like saying, I need, so we always had to have, before we would go to each of the different places to live, I'd always say to the boys, we need to stop and get a supply of freshly slaughtered meat because there's not gonna be enough, because I think I've gotten myself accustomed to eating these massive amounts when I don't know. And I said that to Tay. I said, honey, this is not kilograms that we're getting. I said, this is a goat, this is a sheep. We're sharing among the whole tribe here, and we're just getting these little pieces. I don't know. I said, I don't know. So again, I don't know. I mean, there wasn't a lot. There was not a lot there.
Interesting.
So again, I don't know if they. And that was just my observation of what I experienced. And we did quite a few slaughterings, it was quite a few. But again, here's another interesting thing too. And we always talk about, gotta get aged meat, so it's tender. Their meat is far from aged. It is as fresh as it comes. It's been killed and it's cooked immediately. And they will boil, the Maasai boil a lot of their meat.
Huh.
And the reason why, and this is another thing I'm working on because it's going to be a profound case. What I'm finding out is it's gonna turn a lot of what we know around. It's gonna flip everything around, and people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, we didn't know this. With the Maasai, they revere plants. They all do. Every single tribe does. And I asked them that question. If you watch my lives, one of my first two questions always was, can meat kill us and can plants kill us? And they laughed at both of those questions. And I said, I said, can you go into detail more of this? I said, what about plants? You don't really eat a lot of plants. Why do you revere them? And they said, well, we need them to heal us. Without them, we couldn't survive. And they said, but there's also powerful nutrients that we get from them. And
Wow.
so they talk, and it's so powerful because it's everywhere. They have bark and tree branches that they cut. And they have this tool that they slam it, and it flattens it out and squishes it. And again, it's like breaking apart the cell walls. Okay. And then they boil it in its own separate pot for about an hour. And then they take the broth. They will not consume these. They take the broth from the bark and the herbs they call it herbs. I said, this is a bark and a branch, bark and a branch.
Not oregano.
And so the bark and a branch, and they take the nutrients that has, extrapolated into the water, and they take this water. Now, in another pan, they've got this massive amount of their bones. And here's another thing for everyone who talks about bone broth. No, they said, do not boil it more than an hour.
Really?
Got me thinking, for those of us because when I was vegan, I never had a histamine problem until I became a carnivore. And then it became huge histamine issues. And the reason why is that meat is higher in histamine, especially aged. So now everything I get is quickly caught and frozen. And I get mine from Nourish with the Armstrong girls, my strong sisters, and their meat is so, it's, cut quickly and frozen. And so it's not aged, it's low histamine. But organs are very high in histamine. And so I was devouring massive organs every day, raw organs, liver and kidney raw when I was carnivore, and my histamine just got out of control. Now I totally got reeled in because I cut back on the organs and I do not have aged meat. So now I'm fine. But now I understand the Maasai are brilliant when it comes to meat. Want to talk about meat. They get it. And so they said, no, you don't boil more than an hour. And so, and I'm loving their soups and stuff. And I had no histamine reactions. Normally I would get migraines and so forth from bone broths and things, nothing. And they said, no, you don't boil more than an hour. So then they've got the soup, their meat is boiling, okay, and their fats, and they've got all different things boiling and so forth. But this one special vat for the soup that is they think it's the most healing of anything, is they take the broth from the bark of the special tree and the branches, and they take it and they stir it in. Now the key is, and they were telling me this, and now I'm doing more research, and what I'm coming up with cases, unbelievable. I can't say right now, but I will wait till you hear it when I share what's going to come out. It has to be half an hour. It must be stirred in this highly fat soup. It's massive fat. So you've got your suets, you've got all these things that have been cooking in this pot because they think fat is very healing and very important. However, they know that there's digestive problems, and they know that think about cholesterol and saturated fat. They know things that our science is just figuring things out.
Wow.
And so they take this broth and they stir it in, which no one talks about, and they stir it and they stir it and they stir it. It has to be half an hour. It has to work and work and work. And what they're sharing with me is that they feel it allows their body to be able to digest and to assimilate this high, massive fat content. Without it, it can't.
Wow.
So this is what I'm finding, and my research is proving out that I'm wondering that, here we all are eating all of this, and we don't have this special herb to help us, our bodies to assimilate with what they're doing. And so this is something I think we need to really look very carefully in case. I think that there's something very powerful about this. And they said it's very important.
Wow.
They were
Fascinating.
they were asked about this. So I think we need to look at that. And it hasn't been. I think we're taking that too lightly, because the Maasai, the more I was with them, the more I just kept saying, my golly, they're smart. They really get it. They know how to keep these bodies so prime. And then, of course, their teeth, you just can't help. They're like glowing in the dark. They're so white, And not one tribe, I'm telling you, not one tribe needed braces. Not one of them had crowded teeth. Not one of them. They were just so beautiful. And yes, some of you may say, well, how come they've got this big gap between the Maasai? That's part of their genetic. About 70% of the population of Maasai have a space between. It's a little cute little characteristic. Mateo, he's got the same thing. But they're also missing 2 teeth usually on the bottom. That's not because they were rotting and decayed. That's part of their ritual, their traditions. And we have to think about that whenever you see a tribe member. They may be missing a tooth up here, whatever. But with the Maasai, they will be missing, if they're traditional, they will be missing the 2 central incisors on the bottom, because when they're young, about 4 or 5 years old, someone in their tribe, I think with Mateo, I think he said it was his grandfather, I believe, they will take a knife and they'll dig those out.
Oh my goodness.
No, there is no anesthesia. There is no numbing. It is to show how strong you are.
Oh.
You are not to show sadness. You are not to cry. These people are the strongest people I've ever met in my life. And they are so strong. They're just the most magnificent. And Mateo talks about this in one of his videos. And the women do the same thing. They have to go through the same thing. They also have their ears when they're young. They'll take a stick and they'll put it into the fire and get it so it's red hot. You see the red coals, and they will stick that through your ear and burn a hole through your ear. Again, to show no pain, because the Maasai, it's all about strength, integrity, character. They are just the most pristine people I've ever met in my life. And of course, and then their earlobes, it's all, but they also feel this as a sign of beauty as well, having these things. And I'm just in awe of them, just in awe. I'm telling you a case, it was just miraculous. And so there's just so many rituals that they go through to show pain. And then you've got the circumcisions. Yes, the women can no longer do this anymore because the government has stopped this. But the men, of course, they do. But they're around 15 right before they become the warrior. And that's how you know you're ready for a man. And for men, I'm sure you'll probably go, ah. And Mateo described to me what it was like for him. You go into a tent where there's this person, this is what they do. And and you've been primed your whole life for this, your whole life you're primed, that you are stoic, you do not cry, no matter what the pain is, you do not show. And this is when you show that you're ready to become a warrior, to that next stage of from 15 years old to 30. It's a 15-year period where that's what you focus on, is being this strong man to protect your tribe, your animals. This is it. So they go into a tent without any anesthesia, nothing. The boy stands there. And you cannot flinch. You cannot wince. You can do nothing, not a tear. And they circumcise you with nothing.
I'm
And then
flinching just sitting here.
I can't see. I don't know. I'm not advanced. I just can't imagine. And he says, Suze, it would want to drop you to your knees. And so it's like when because he was like my son, it's like we would always be holding hands, and, my arm in his. I just felt just in awe that I just know someone who's gone through this. It was just so profound, just so profound. And with the women were going through the same thing, that they would have to go through a circumcision. I'm sorry, I get so much that they would do the circumcision as well. And they said that the pain was just horrible.
Oh my goodness.
It's brutal, but and people will say this is just vicious, it's vicious, but they don't see it this way at all.
Yeah.
And when you live with them, like I was doing, you revere them so much that you can see it means everything to them. Their life, their lifestyle. And this is another key thing. And some of my colleagues tell me I'm wrong with this, but I'm not. I'm not. It's not just what we eat. That's very powerful. But and I had deep talk with the 90, 100-year-old people about these things, and they agree as well. Their environment, even though they can't describe what love is, because they don't marry for love, their marriages are usually planned by their father. This is who you're going to marry, and they pay for it. There's a bride price. It's usually cattle that they would be given, and so they really don't have love, and they couldn't describe love for me. They said love is, that, we provide food for our wife and our family, we protect them. It's Ephesians chapter, 5 in the Bible, it's the man protects and provides, and the woman takes care of, and she honors and respects, and she's there to, take care of the children and her husband and the family and so forth, and the bomas and everything. And that's what love is to them. You display it by doing that. But yet, I have never felt so loved because it exudes from them. Case it just exudes from them. I mean, as soon as I walked in, they were just, it was just so. And they're not huggy, but I am. So I'm always hugging them, and they became used to, okay, she's a hugger. Some of the men, oh, no, we don't do this. But some of the men that I became very close with, they started realizing that's who I am, so they would hug me. And but every morning, so it's the sun's just coming up, and it's the most beautiful. Oh my gosh! So it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and the sun is just coming up over the desert, and I'm crawling out, and of course there's either a dog or chickens or donkeys right where I am, because I'm right in their boma with where everything is, and you see them coming all out of their huts, and from neighbors from the different other bomas and regions, and they've all got their spears, and they come over, and all the men come together. How are you? They check in with each other. The camaraderie was just, and they come to see me. How are you? I hardly see anyone. I hardly see my neighbors. We're all like blocked in. We're all that's like, in our cages. And then the women, you see them all coming out, they're getting ready to milk the goats or whatever, the cattle. And they're all coming to see each other. How are you? And the children are all coming out. It's the most beautiful environment that you've ever experienced, and the love. And I felt so at peace, even though I was scared, because I'm thinking, what am I going to see? What's going to come and get us? And I'll tell you about our interaction with the wild hyena. Um, I was just so at peace. I just kept saying to Teo, I kept saying, honey, this is part of it. I said, I feel like if I have anything brewing inside of me, it's healing just from the love that I'm feeling here. And of course the environment is so clean, there's no toxic chemicals. Everything you're eating is so pure, so clean, untainted, so ancestral. Everything was just so aha moments for me. It's part of that wild piece that comes out of you that you're longing your whole life. What is it to be a human? I mean, I know I'm probably weird because this is all I've ever thought of since, as my grandmother was living with tribes. This is all I've ever thought of. What is it to be human and to actually live it, Case? To actually live it. And I want so badly to bring this to our communities. And I said that. I said, what I wouldn't give to have a Maasai village, to build one. And I know the Maasai probably wouldn't want to live here because it's so cold, but to actually live like one here, and I've had a couple of my friends, I know Ben, he's one that follows me. We've talked about, can you imagine having this environment? We could create something like this, where people can go and experience this is what being a human is. And Teo and I were talking the same thing, to build someplace in Tanzania where people can come and for weeks at a time, just come and just be inundated with this environment, be flooded with it, and just become your human being that you're supposed to be. You will never be the same. It is so healing. It is so profound. And it was just miraculous. And I could see why they're so healthy. They're so healthy. And another thing for their teeth, this is their toothbrush.
Yeah, just a stick, right? I saw some of those
But it's
videos.
a special stick. It's a special stick. And I can never remember the name of it. The I can't remember it. It's one of my slides, but they will go out and get, and it's actually, and I researched this very carefully, and it actually has antimicrobial, antibacterial. It's got things that prevents cavities. It's all with all within this, and they know this, and they've got them in their mouths all the time. They've got either a stick or a blade of grass, and they're constantly going at it, or and of course on the other end, they've got it's almost like a toothpick. They're always picking at their teeth. They want to make sure there's nothing. They care so much about the care of their teeth and their bodies,
Wow.
you know. And they, of course, they were amazed at my body because I work out, and they've never seen a woman, or even them. My muscles are bigger. They don't have muscles, even though they walk. And this is another key. And they all said this: if we're going to eat these high meat diets, okay, guys, and I'm one of them, okay, then we need to make sure we're moving. This is not a diet for a sedentary person. And they said that you must be moving to be able to utilize the nutrients in all of the things, and the fats and the saturated fats and cholesterol. They said, you got to move. This is not a sedentary lifestyle. You cannot. And that's so important. We've got to make sure we're saying, if you're going to be eating this massive amounts of meat, then you had better be moving a lot. And they walk, and I'm talking the 100-year-olds too, at least 12 to 15 miles a day.
Amazing.
At least.
Wow.
Yeah. They're not sitting around. They said, you can't. They said, that's going to be, you can't do that. So movement is another key thing to our health, especially if we're going to be eating these high, meat diets, high animal meat diets. Another thing, if there's just cases or anything you want to ask.
No, this is absolutely fascinating. I love what you said about love. We only have a few more minutes, but yeah, how do you want to wrap this up as far as like what you said about the longing? That's what I feel when I hear you describe this. Like, what is it to be human? You hear these stories, and to experience that, I don't know that I'm going to be able to set up a hut next to yours with the Maasai and like live with you.
I will take you one day.
I would love to go. Oh, I would love to go. What things? How will this experience transform not only the way you're eating, but the way you live when you're back here? And it is what it is in America, and we've got 5G and Wi-Fi, and we're talking through Zoom, and like all these things that have taken us away from what really truly made us human. How will this change you?
Well, see, I've always lived ancestrally. I don't own a TV. I haven't. I don't sit in front of a TV. I don't have a microwave. I don't have a Wi-Fi. I have everything hardwired in. I try to keep myself as far away from toxins as possible. I mean, for as far as I can remember, I've been eating like this. It's not me. I was doing vegan, but I was never eating anything as far as I can to stay away from chemicals as much as possible. It's almost impossible where we are because we're breathing it in. Glyphosate is everywhere. I think the key thing is, guys, is to stay, when we come into our homes, put the phones down. To see the people, and even the children, they have eye contact. They look at you when they talk. They care about you. Oh, and this is another key thing. Oh my gosh. When you're talking to them, so if I'm talking, when you're talking, Case, every time you're talking, I'd be going, because I'm constantly showing you, I'm listening to you, I'm in tuned with you. You matter what you're saying. And I said, why is everyone making this sound? What's this sound? And Kate was like, because we're showing respect. We're showing that we're listening. It was so beautiful. I'm like, I always feel like no one's listening. I'm always like, hello, because they're either looking at their phones. You can see them kind of looking off at a distance, thinking about what their next thing they're going to be thinking about. It was so profound. And there's just so much that we could learn from these ancestral living people. It matters to them. You matter to them. And we don't have that. And this is all part of health. It's all part of health. I mean, I could go on. And real quickly with the Sanjo tribe, they are more this tribe we lived with was more plant-based. And I noticed that Miriam, I spent a lot of time with her. She was 25 years old. She's been married for 2 years. She's struggling to get pregnant. So she seems to be infertile right now. When I talk with the girls in the Maasai or the Jitogas, they're pregnant. I mean, like on their wedding night, they have no infertility problems, nothing. There was no birth defects. In the Sanjo, I did see birth defects. There was one girl that was all, very crippled up. Again, they hardly eat meat and dairy, hardly at all. They said maybe a glass of milk a day. They stopped. They're doing mostly plants again. So again, I'm noticing the more animal-based, the healthier, but they are not all completely carnivore. They do eat seasonal fruits. They do. And of course, bark, they are eating it. They are not eating it, but they're extracting the nutrients. And so again, they're not getting all that fiber and things. And their gut microbiome, again, it's because of they're not sterilizing things. We're too clean here, people. I mean, I wasn't taking a bath or a shower for days and days and days. And there was nothing to wash with. We had a little bit of water that I could at least wipe my face off with, but my hair was getting really greasy, so I was braiding it, And then when we would stop someplace, I could take a quick shower. Sometimes there was no water because there's no electricity because the government shut, it's again, the government's really impacting, or there's just cold water. And so it was a very quick shower because it was so cold. But yeah, it's a different way of living. And Case, we need to get back to living as our ancestors. And I'm not saying people are going to comment, oh, yeah, I'm going to live in a hot. No, but you can make your home less toxic by shutting things down, and not being on technology so much. Care about the people we don't know how long any of us have to live. Look at people when they're talking to you. They matter. It matters. And all of this is part of health and part of stress. And there's just so much I could go into that. It's so much information for a lifetime, but Case, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate the time you've given me again.
This is not the last time we are going to chat. I can tell you that.
I just love you.
Amazing. I'm so grateful for you, and love you and your story as well. And to share again, all of us are very interested in nutrition. All of us want the answers as far as like what we can be eating, what we've eaten in the past. What you're describing goes so far beyond food. It is the love and the sharing, and to hear all of that. It just makes me want to, I don't know, smile a little bit more on a morning walk, or say hello and just care a little bit more.
It matters.
It's wonderful.
And the thing is, he said in the Messiah, they said, no one is ever alone. You will never eat alone. And I said, well, that's most of us are.
Yeah.
Where we are. We're alone.
Yep. Wow.
And a lot of things to think about.
Suze, this has been absolutely amazing. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you in your work?
Thanks, Kate. Most of the time, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is my thing because that's where all my live chats are on. And so that's at Suzanne.alexander.104. Again, I do also work for Ancestral Health Foundation. I've also got those pages as well on Instagram and Facebook. I do Twitter, but not really because I don't feel comfortable there. But Instagram, if you really want to find things, that's where you can find all my videos, all my live chats, all my postings. Everything is there. And I just appreciate everything, guys. Thanks for everyone being there.
We are equally telling you to put your phone away and also telling you to follow Suze on her Instagram. You have to see some of these videos, and what you documented there was so incredibly beautiful. The people are beautiful, the clothing, the whole experience just was absolutely wonderful. And that's such a great resource and place where people can follow. So this has been absolutely wonderful, Suze. Seriously, thank you so very much for everything that you have done and for taking these amazing journeys and coming home to share with the rest of us. And I hope all of us can act a little bit differently and live a little bit differently after hearing about this. So thank you so very much for everything you do. We're so, so grateful for you.
Thank you, Case. I adore you. Have a wonderful Easter weekend.
Likewise, we adore you as well. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. As always, thank you so very much for listening to Boundless Body Radio. Hosting this podcast is seriously one of the most meaningful and joyous parts of my life. Even after 600 episodes of our show, I still get nervous before every interview that I do. But it does just bring me such joy to share some of my favorite people, the people that have taught me so much over the years, and to invite them on and ask them questions, and then to share that with you, the listener, is a super cool experience. I hope you've enjoyed the content of the show so far this year. I tried to start the year off with a mix of new guests and returning guests, some that are practically household names in the health and wellness space, and some inspiring people that may not be very well known now, but are certainly doing amazing work wherever they are. I'm just so grateful for all of our incredible guests. Remember that you can always go to our website to book a complimentary 30-minute session with us at myboundlessbody.com. On our homepage, one of the first things you'll see is a Book Now button where you can select a time to speak with us about your personal health and fitness plan. We don't have any set packages, products, supplements, or anything like that to sell you. People that do want to work with us simply pay for the time that they want, and that's about it. We've loved chatting with so many of you out there to bounce ideas off each other and try to offer any advice that we can. And seriously, as always, even if you book a spot just to say hello and introduce yourself, we absolutely love connecting with you, the listener, in our community. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel, which is also growing quite a bit, if you want to watch these full interviews and also shorter videos on more specific topics taken from these interviews as well. It's a fun way to interact with people who comment. We read and reply to every single YouTube comment we get, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave as many comments as you like. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple. It is still the best way to make sure that the podcast gets out to more listeners. It only takes a moment to leave a review, and it's extremely meaningful to us. Cheers, and thank you again for listening to Boundless Body Radio.